Hey, so this is Brave. What's going on, guys and gals and ladies and everybody? I'm trying to figure out where I want to start. It's a few different things I want to talk about. So let's start with this. First of all, where the fuck is Tulsi Gabbard? Like, I'm not being facetious. If anybody knows, please comment below. Let me know. Where the fuck is Tulsi Gabbard at? Right? We were supposed to get a podcast at some point. She's supposed to be doing a podcast. I think on her Tulsi.Gabbard.locals.com or something like that. I haven't seen it, and definitely haven't seen it on YouTube, so I don't know. So yeah, if any clues as to what Tulsi Gabbard is up to or something, please let me know because I would like to check it out. And if she's not doing anything, goddamn, that's scary because kind of goes into what I want to get into. Um, like often I will be having these conversations or debates with other interested parties, like-minded people that have similar opinions or dissenting opinions, but still on the same lines of um, pontificating about the political circumstances that we are dealing with, right? And I like to raise the point, even if just to be, an asshole, that the reason why Bernie bent the knee, the reason why the squad is doing shit that we don't agree with and can't understand and can't comprehend and can't explain, the reason why, oh shit, we know why Tulsi had to pull out. They just blacked her out. Like, but still, the reason why she left Congress, right? I would say, right, is because these people all happen to know some shit that we don't know. That's coming. You know what I'm saying? Um, I firmly believe that. Even in jest, I still firmly believe that they know some stuff that we don't know. Um, well, I think, but if I sit there for a second, we sit there for a second and dissect it a bit, or better yet, delve a little bit deeper. I think we do know. I think we do all have a sense that something's not right. Obviously, that the wheels are coming off, right? And we all seem to have different opinions about it because there is so much misinformation, right? And so many hands in the pot just kind of stirring us around so that we can't really get our balance and figure out or set our eyes on what the real issue is, or at least the real cause of the issue, right? So we're all kind of grasping at straws, but not in a conspiratorial way. I think we're a lot closer than we think. You're a lot closer. I'm going to be very direct. You're a lot closer than you think as to what's going on, what's coming, right? Um, Now, because you may follow different sects or different ideologies or whatever, different groups, right? You might classify yourself as a conservative or a liberal or a leftist or a righty or independent or whatever the fuck, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You're still, if you're at this level where a paycheck determines, whether or not you're good this week or this month, then I'm pretty sure you have a very good view of things as far as the road is kind of bumpy. It's falling apart, and at some point, it looks like the concrete's going to drop out, and there ain't no road to go any further, right? The difference is, what do we do to deal with it? How do we accept it? Not in the sense of like, accept it, put our hands down and quit and don't, fight back or try to move forward or anything like that. I mean, accept it as far as come to terms with it, understanding that this thing is changing. You know what I'm saying? It's changing. And in some way we have to figure out a way of how to save ourselves because the ship is going down. And, that might sound hyperbolic, right? That might sound like some fear mongering or something, because I know there's a good sect of people that want to be glass half full, right? This is not a matter of glass half full or half empty, right? This is a matter of how do we survive this, or even possibly take control of the ship and right the ship, right? Before it's too late. And that requires that we get a very realistic view of things, right? And learn how to not only discuss it, but within what vein, like what terminology to use and what terminology to abandon. And that's what I want to get to. Like, so I often refer to some of the shows and podcasts and different mediums that I watch and interact with, even, right? A few in particular. I noticed that a lot of these platforms, especially the ones that want to maintain, I guess, some sense of objectivity, or appear to be balanced or rooted in, the sensible, right? They tend to still use this the established terminology, right? The establishment terminology, right? When having conversations, when having debates, when dissecting stories, when even getting into headlines, right? They still want to not. Let me clarify. They approach the conversation. The conversation that everybody wants to have. They approach these conversations, but they approach it as if it's quite possibly true or honest intent that Washington and the leaders and blah blah blah, or whatever, the left, the right, or whoever, media. How about that? Media, establishment media, cable media, whatever the case is. All the industrial complexes, right? They approach those conversations, or those discussions, wanting to maintain some sense of or some veneer of objectivity, and because of this, they don't call things for what the fuck it is. Notice how I'm highbrow and lowbrow at the same time. They don't call the shots, man, as the fuck what it is. They, for case in point, I called into one of my shows, my little morning routine, and not being malicious or anything like that, but I raised the point, and I do this all the time. This is not the call-in part. That I raise this point all the time, on multiple platforms and in multiple conversations. I raise this point, and this is the point. Those that are in control, the powers that be, right? They understand that all of this shit that they have sold us is an illusion. They understand that we are the product. We are the we are the product. They understand that. They understand that there is a false dynamic that's been established. They work within it. They understand that this whole thing has been set up for them to benefit, right? That's the quickest and shortest way to it for me to put it, right? But let me clarify just in case. When we're talking about Democrats and Republicans, we're not talking about you and me, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. We're not talking about us. We don't count in that way. We're talking about Democrats and Republicans' establishment party. We're talking about the system, the power structure, right? They have a very different way of looking at things than us. And we try to bend ourselves to view things. We've been trained to bend ourselves to view things not through their lens. We assume that we're all viewing things through their lens, but we're not. We've been conditioned to view things through the lens that they have created for us. If that makes sense. And this gets to the point of the terminology that we use. So when we are having conversations with each other and we're debating over capitalism versus socialism, shit like that, right? That's a perfect example. Capitalism versus socialism, as if we have as if we have or could have or have had a clean version of either in this country. We have not. Specifically capitalism, we have not, we do not, we would not, because if we did, then things would be quite different, right? And so when we engage in that debate, it's consistent. The debate of capitalism goes straight into capitalism versus socialism. Why is that though? Because none of us, well, some of us, some liberals, some left-leaning people, they argue socialism only because, and this is the part you don't understand, only because they're so frustrated with the system as it is. And they refer to it as capitalism, again, going back to my point, because that is the lens by which we have been given or trained to view things through, right? We don't have capitalism. We don't have capitalism. We do not. Like, anyone who understands capitalism, just go check the definition out, right? Anyone who understands capitalism or at least knows what it's supposed to be, right? And I'm not even talking about the fundamental history of capitalism, the historic sense of the word, right? Because even that is kind of creepy. No, I'm talking about the little platform that we were sold, the little platter that we were sold that capitalism is supposed to be. It has not been that. It's not been that, right? So the idea that we get enthralled into these conversations, these furious debates about capitalism, and then left side mostly get frustrated and are upset because that system is not working. So then as a recourse, they will possibly argue socialism or what sounds to the other side as socialism, right? And notice the disconnect comes in because the right side is saying, oh, that's socialism, right? And we can't do that. But they themselves also realize, I'm not talking about the establishment at this point, I'm talking about just us ground level people. They themselves also realize that things are not right. Things are horrible. They themselves are doing bad because you see, at the end of the day, at the floor, which is where we are, right? Everybody's doing bad. Even if you're doing kind of good, you're still doing bad, right? You're not doing as good as you should be doing in the richest country on earth, right? This is not about, oh, give me handouts or, want fair outcomes. We're nowhere near that conversation, right? We're just talking about what it should be based on what they have said it is, right? So at that level, those on the right even feel the boot on their neck, and they would be relieved by certain things, but they themselves have also been, because of their ideology, have also been trained to enter the conversation from a certain perspective, even if that perspective is against their own best interests. Now, again, when I relate that to what's supposed to be the left side of the conversation, it's not that they don't recognize what will be in their own best interest to a certain extent. It's just that they are using terminology that puts the brakes on accomplishing any compromise or group understanding of the terrain to which we are facing, right? Which in turn works against their best interest. So let's say that plainly. You're on the left. You see that we're at war, basically. Let's call it class war. You might get into the race war and all that shit, and the social justice war and all that shit. But the basis of all this is that we are at war with a system that does not benefit us and we have no power over, right? We are also divided. So the only way that you can have any kind of strength, right, to be able to negotiate this obstacle, right, is to uh, rally up all your people. You need bodies. You need gangs and gangs of people and gangs of support. Everybody got to come together because the opposition is huge. And the opposition, even though they are a small number, the opposition, right, is in control of everything. So you don't got time to be fighting over small things like, oh, this group wants to be conservative about this or that. You don't have time for that shit. And you know it, but instead you would prefer to, be judgmental or, I guess, intolerant of different people with different life experiences, right? So even though it's in your best interest to find some camaraderie and work together, you instead work against your best interest. Going back to my point, see, I brought it back. You decide to work against your best interest because you have been trained to do so, right? Because of the terminology that you're using and where you've been and the way you enter the conversation in the first place. And that's where it comes back to the terminology that we use and how we have been trained to view things through a lens that is not our own, that does not benefit us. So when you hear your favorite pundit, and I'm going to speak specifically to those that lean more independent or left or whatever the case is, when you well, not even that. I think we're pretty much at this point. We're all pretty much independent. We just don't know it or want to accept it, right? But when you listen to them, these pundits, these online personalities that are supposed to be independent voices themselves, when you listen to them and they are trying to have a conversation or a debate or whatever, but they're using the terminology, they're addressing the headlines, they're addressing the news, they're addressing the stories, they're addressing the problem as if the way it's been presented by the powers that be, by their apparatus, which is the media, they're addressing it in the same terms that it's been delivered to them. It's been presented to them. So, case in point, headline: Joe Biden, Joe Biden overseas, and I'm sorry, doing the G7, and they're coming up with this, that, and the third for us moving forward, and China's the problem, and Russia, right? So then these pundits take those headlines, because we all do. I don't consider myself a pundit, but we all do. If we're keeping up with this stuff, we read we read the news, we read the headlines. I would hope you go deeper into the article. I would hope you're just not watching videos, you're actually reading. Put that aside. You take this information as it's been provided, and then you expand upon it. Well, what I'm doing right now, right, to a certain extent. They take that information and they get caught up in the story, and they debate the story as if the way it's been presented has any sense of validity, like it's valid that to discuss the problems that Joe Biden is having and the Democrats are having with the filibuster. The filibuster. If you're having a conversation about the filibuster, you're already fucking wrong. You're already wrong. I'm not even going to get into that because we're already cracking up some time, right? The filibuster doesn't fucking matter. Doesn't fucking matter. It's another excuse, another cop out, right? All that shit's a cop out, right? So why then waste time talking about that? Why then not get to the point? I understand that it's a much more interesting conversation to talk about, like, they call it the horse race shit. Talk about the horse race and how the Democrats got to push their policy and how the Republicans got to push their policy. And the Republicans are fighting against, are trying to cancel the vote because they won't let water be given out in pizza in lines with no consideration, right? Not even addressing the fact that our whole voting system is fucked up and rigged and full of crap, right? You get caught up talking about things in that way, and you never get to the point. And again, I understand that it's a more interesting conversation, or at least it makes for longer conversation that everyone can relate to and have time to comment on for more clicks and more views, because that's what the game is, right? Because while because I don't consider myself anyone special. I don't consider myself anyone who's accomplished any political. I'm not ex-CIA or some operator of some NGO who's in the know of none of that shit, man. I never worked at some major New York paper. None of that shit. I'm just paying attention, and I'm just trying to share information. And I don't know everything. I know what I know, and I question that, right? So as I come up with information or interesting thoughts, I try to share it, right? And I would ask that you do the same, right? Even within the comments, if you have information, share it, share links so that other people can get that information too and go visit it and find out for themselves whether it's valid or not. Having said that, I am not concerned with clicks. I am not concerned, at least at this point, I'm not concerned with that, right? So I guess maybe it's easier for me to just say, hey, fuck all that bullshit talk. Let's get to the real point. We don't got to have a long ass elaborate discussion about filibusters and judges and all this bullshit, right? Here's what we know, blah 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 blah. Right now, let's deal with that. We have to get to that, and the only way we can get to that is to get rid of we gotta cut all the bullshit out. Like, I know that's like really like I know that that's very it sounds like, first, easier said than done, and then two, maybe general, but it's not general. It's not general. It's very specific. Consider, stop bullshitting. It don't get no more clearer than that, right? Stop bullshitting. I don't need to talk to you. I don't need to hear you talk about Joe Manchin and what Joe Manchin is doing, knowing that Joe Manchin is really just a cop-out for the Democrats and for Biden, who has no intentions on doing what he's doing in the first fucking place. You see what I'm saying? That's the point that I am making. I don't need to consider myself I would never consider myself a Democrat or Republican. Why would I? Now, that's me. You may have a different view of things. I get that. I understand that some people's ideals and who they consider, who they fancy themselves, or what they fancy themselves as, is heavily grounded in the fact that they were raised conservative, or they feel that they're liberal and all that shit. But think about this. Think about this. You have a term, right, that means one thing, but the group to which you identify, who classifies themselves as that term, who supposedly upholds that term, don't uphold that term. They don't stand for that. They're not doing that. None of their actions are doing that. Nothing in that system, nothing in the system that relates to that is what it should be if it was that indeed. So what the fuck is the point of the term? It's just a word. It's just terminology. For them, and this is the key point. This is the key thing. This is what it all gets to. When I say that they view things through a very different lens than us. They've created a lens for us to view things. They've created this path for us to be on and walk on and think that we're in the same building and think that we're in the same club. But going back to that old joke, it's all one big club and your ass ain't in it, right? So that term and how they view things, they know that term is not shit. They know that the money and the power, that is the shit. Control, that is the shit. Controlling the thing, controlling the people, that is the shit. Controlling the resources, that is the shit. Understanding that they got to get as much out as they can because they know they run this thing off the rails. That is the shit right there. And that's what they do. Consider COVID. Consider the early part of COVID, right? As an example, because I want to prove the point that I'm not full of shit when I'm saying this. I want to prove this point. I want to give you examples, something that's tangible that you can touch. COVID comes. They know it ahead of time. I'm talking like Congress and senators and shit like that. And they're all making deals and passing laws and selling stock and all kinds of shit to better themselves before you even know that COVID is here. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, whatever the fuck you are, right? Think about it for a second. They knew the shit was here. well before the time. And you might make an excuse for them because you know you're hardcore conditioned, whether you know it or not. Well, you know, they didn't want to cause panic and stuff. Fuck that. Fuck that shit. Okay? They knew the shit was here. They knew the house was on fire. And while you were sleeping upstairs, they were grabbing all of their stuff, getting as much of their stuff as they could, and getting it out of the house before the house burned down. They didn't wake you up because you was conservative. They didn't wake you up because you was Republican. They didn't wake you up because you was liberal. They didn't wake you up because you was a Democrat or vote blue no matter who. They didn't give a fuck. You see what I'm saying? And I'm not just talking about like the Republicans here in Georgia who was selling that stock and all that. I'm not just talking about that, right? Pelosi made deals. Remember that Microsoft deal? Pelosi made deals. Like they do it on both sides because both sides are the same. I know you've heard it 1,000 times, so I don't gotta preach that part to you. The part that I have to make sure that you get is that you need to consider that it may be time to reevaluate your classifications. It may be time to consider that the classifications don't fucking count. Don't matter. It don't mean nothing. Because if the house is on fire, what does it matter if you have on a red or a blue shirt? It's going to burn just the same. That's my point. So we need to reassess the way we have these conversations. Capitalism versus socialism? Fuck, what the fuck do you mean? If we don't really have capitalism, unless it's going to be a hard pill for conservatives, right? You don't have capitalism, bro. You don't have it. You don't have it, right? You might have it to a certain very small extent, right? But you got the ass and butt end of it. You see what I'm saying? Get the ass and butt end of it. If you're watching this video, you're watching this video because you may not view things specifically how I view things, but you do have some sense that something is wrong and you are searching for answers. You're searching for insight. You're at least searching for someone who feels the same, who has that same itch in the back of their throat that they can't just quite reach. You know how you get that itch right here and you can't quite reach it? You're looking for someone that has that same itch because maybe you can put your heads together and y'all can figure out, we can all figure out what the fuck is going on and come to the understanding that we already know what the fuck is going on. This ship is sinking. How do we stop it? That's the question. How do we save ourselves? That is the question. That is the itch in the back of your throat that you are looking for. In order to accomplish that, the first thing you have to do is shed the bullshit, right? That's shed the extra weight. You can't float in the middle of the sea with a bunch of extra weight on you. The extra weight, the dead weight is conservative versus liberal, leftist versus righty, and all that dumb shit that don't fucking matter because the people who created it for themselves so that you would fucking be left fighting amongst each other over some bullshit they're not even dealing with. I do believe you guys remember Kamala Harris, who's the vice president that nobody really was interested in when she was running for president. And who was the cat? Was it Mitch McConnell? Was it Ted Cruz? One of those cats bumping fists, did the fist bump on the floor at the same time they're supposed to have been beefing. I bring that up because that's a perfect example of what the fuck is going on. So I'm gonna end this because this has been a very long thing, and I got a few more videos that I want to make. But yeah, man, yeah. There's a very good video. I try to always share some information, right? There's a very good video that Richard Wolff put out here recently on his economic update channel called The Center Cannot Hold. I'll share the link down below. You should really check that out. Something else that I'm watching that's really good right now, a channel, a podcast called Let's Talk It Over, LTIO, hosted by Frank Barat and Yanis Varoufakis. Anything you can find with Yanis Varoufakis on it talking, that's, I got it written down. I'm not acting like I know how to spell this shit off the top of my head. Varoufakis. First name Yanis, Yanis. Anything you can find with Yanis Varoufakis in it, watch that shit, because he comes from a very inside level from a very high level, dealing with some very high level international money. So he understands, right? He's got a lot of good information. There are a couple of people on that particular podcast for that episode, but it was about debt as power. So that's what I'm watching right now, as a matter of fact. It's very long. So check it out. But that's all for right now. I don't know, man. If you got more information, share it. If you disagree, put it in the comments or hit me up, thewelldressednerd at yahoo.com. And by all means, if you have links to more shows and other information and stuff like that, please share it in the comments. Subscribe, don't subscribe. I'm not concerned about that part, but tell a friend. If you find us interesting, if you didn't find it interesting, if you just found it intriguing enough to piss you off, tell a friend. Have a conversation. You ain't got to credit me for it. Like, just have a conversation. I'm out.